All right, so let me paint a mental image in your head. You're in the gym on a typical chest day, and rep after rep, you crush your muscles and push yourself to further agony. Meanwhile, you're thinking to yourself, WTF, why am I doing this? You look around and there's 50 other people who, for some sick reason, share the same sadistic quest for pain that you do. Then you think back to the American classic, Pain and Gain, featuring the critically acclaimed Marky Mark and no Funky Bunch, but the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, detailing the story of two bodybuilders who got involved in a kidnapping scheme. While this isn't the story of a kidnapping scheme, this is the story of your way to success. We will be diving into the relationship between pain and gain as we tackle the questions of how we build muscle, the role of pain, and what you can do today to maximize your gains.
The Mental Rep.
Welcome back to The Mental Rep, a district podcast where each week we dive into the complex topics of training, nutrition, and recovery with a roundtable discussion led by top professionals in fitness and performance. I'm your host, Jorge Diaz.
And I'm Scott Gunter.
Daniel Belay.
And gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. A little painful. There he goes. Can't resist swearing in 2 minutes.
It's Dan's personality, man. It's the way he breaks into each episode. You know, he just kind of like lets it rip real quick, and then we get into the topic. Any client wins for the week, folks?
Oh, our little buddy Sid. I hope that he's listening to this because he loves that. He had a big PR on squat yesterday.
What did he hit?
145 pounds, and his best in competition last year is 121. He hit that for a triple yesterday.
And he weighs in at?
That's a fantastic question. I want to say about 120 pounds.
Yeah, he
Nice.
looks like 120 pounds.
Probably 120 pounds. And keep in mind, it doesn't sound very impressive, but let's remember this kid's 13.
And just started when?
I think he is going to be coming up a year in July, actually, with us. So pretty exciting stuff. Going to be competing in powerlifting, coached by our, he's not here. He hasn't been here the last 2 weeks. Cool, man. I'm in Hawaii. Coach Neil. But yeah, so Neil's been doing a great job with the kid.
I got to ask you guys an honest question. How old were you when you first squatted?
Like body weight?
Just how old were you? No, how old were you?
Like with a barbell or?
Yeah, with a bar, any type of squat,
Well, I mean, I feel like babies. Have you ever seen a baby squat? I feel like
Usually the
Yeah.
natural progression.
True.
Crawling.
Okay, let me rephrase that. For me, I think I was like 17 or 18, even though I had stepped into the gym when I was like 13 or 14. So it took me about 3 to 4 years before from when I started lifting, just generally lifting, whether it's with dumbbells, whether it's bench pressing, whether it's any of that, to finally start squatting.
Yeah, mine was probably around high school too, because you go into the gym after track practice or sports practice, and there's not a lot of guidance there. So you go up with your friend to a barbell because those are cool, and you do 2 exercises that people know, bench, squat, and you get crushed under both. You probably do it with bad form. You're on your toes, your knees are coming in, but obviously you add more weight to the bar.
Yeah. It's granted. You must add more weight to the bar just because you have your boys in there pushing you to limits that you shouldn't be pushed to.
Granted, had my work cut out for me, had to completely rethink my squat pattern several years ago and kind of work my way into a better position.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So today, gentlemen, our topic of the day is something that you hear a lot about that on the internet. I don't know. I think every trainer tells you that you should be eating more protein. You hear about this on those nutrition bars that boast 8 grams per snack bar. And then you might hear the term being tossed around, protein synthesis. So today we're going to talk about everything that surrounds protein and protein synthesis. But mainly as it pertains to an athlete and for those that are training, this protein synthesis is strictly focused on the training aspect, how it affects your training, how it affects your recovery, but mainly your stimulus response adaptation.
Let's go back to that analogy in the beginning where you were talking about lifting and putting yourself through agony. We all do it, but I feel like people don't understand what they're actually doing. What we're doing is trying to get adaptation from a stimulus. The stimulus that we're actually putting on the body is weight training, resistance, forms of stress. So when he says stimulus response adaptation, that's a form of curve essentially that it's a chain of events where the body is really good at adapting to things. If you put stress on the body in a certain area, it's going to respond to that. If you put stress on a bone, if you break a bone, if I punch Jorge for about an hour, he might get a little bit of increased bone density or bone growth there because the body just wants to respond to the stresses that are placed on it. So because our body is so good at that, we can use strategic exercises. We can use resistance training to put extra stress on the muscles that we wouldn't normally experience just walking around doing daily life. And we can get a response out of that where the body says, okay, we need to be stronger. We need to grow. We're going to lay down some more protein. We're going to get protein synthesis. But what also occurs with that is this what's called catabolic and anabolic pathway. We have a certain period of time where we are essentially putting stress on the body. It almost breaks down a little bit. And then in response to that, we're getting this anabolic pathway where the body rebuilds itself back up.
So essentially, like what you're saying is just like resistance training is going to be the thing that's going to help us break down. So that's what's going to create the adaptation. And then so we basically just need to just refuel and build it back up.
Wait, so you're saying I don't make my gains in the gym?
I'm saying you make your gains because of the gym after the gym, if you do the right things.
I like the way you said that.
But on top of that, if you don't do the right things, you can make, what's the opposite of gains? Regression?
Losses?
I guess losses. Seems so obvious to you two guys.
So guys, what is the definition of protein synthesis? That is what protein is for, right? So what's the definition of protein synthesis?
Before I lay this up for Dan, protein synthesis is the adaptation part of that stimulus response adaptation curve. We get the stimulus, we have this response. Our adaptation is when protein synthesis is occurring.
So protein synthesis, to break it down, is just simply the metabolic process that describes the incorporation of amino acids to bind to the skeletal muscle with protein.
So what are amino acids?
Oh, we weren't going to talk about that yet.
We're talking about protein all the time. And usually, unless you're in the gym, unless you're in a supplement store, you don't see amino acids too much. You might see them hidden on labels, but protein is the big buzzword. Essentially, we don't use protein, we use amino acids. Now, proteins are built from amino acids. You get these chemical structures, amino acids that are put together in chains. They're wound over each other and kind of tightly packed. And depending on their organization, there's a lot of different amino acids that can make up a protein. And that's where we have these different protein types. Now, most of the proteins that we see are going to be either a whey protein in our milk-based sources. We have plant-based proteins. There's proteins in pretty much a good amount of the foods that we eat, just in different proportions. So we take in protein and then our body breaks it back down into these amino acids. And then we use those amino acids to get that adaptation and funnel into that protein synthesis.
It's interesting. We're going to be diving into, I guess, your thoughts of, when you see people drinking a jug of amino acids, what are your guys' thoughts of that?
So precision nutrition kind of lists it as a waste of money, as in not super effective.
Jorge also distinguishes that as a waste of money.
But they also recommend it for people who are trying to develop lean muscle mass and not really trying to build if you're looking more at physique or fat loss. They will say have it during a session, but I think there's more important things.
I think for that sake, in my opinion, if you want your amino acids, you should just drink a protein shake before your workout. The protein shake, whey protein, consists of all the branch chain amino acids and the essential amino acids that you'll need, especially if you're drinking whey protein. I would assume, now, to be honest with you, I just recently started doing this. I assumed that because you're drinking like whey protein, which often is derived from milk, that you would go into your exercise a little nauseous. So you would assume that it would upset your stomach. But reality is, unless you're doing like a HIIT exercise where you're actually jumping up and down or you're moving around and you're really swirling those things in your belly and you're going upside down, basically just don't do like an hour or a session of jujitsu after drinking protein. I just wouldn't recommend it.
Sounds personal and oddly specific. I guess I'm curious because I feel like we get that question a lot talking about amino acids, since you see all of the gym bros walking around with those colorful jugs.
Yeah, I think
so. I think we can all agree it's a waste of money.
My
But
debate for that would be, is water important for muscle gain?
Yeah, I think it's different because they're trying to scrape up every bit of gains that they can possibly do.
Yes.
And they're really pushing their muscle fibers beyond the limits. You know, they don't really believe in the, I don't want to generalize and assume that none of them believe in this, but I'm sure that there are a lot of them that have the philosophy that they shouldn't stop when they have 2 reps in reserve. They should keep going until there's no more, and then do another set of the same style. That's just a mentality I guess I used to have when I was doing bodybuilding many, many moons ago. And when I had that mentality, and if you're going to be pushing yourself to those limits, you know what? I think to that, I say, hey, if you have the money, if you have the disposable income, if you can put some money towards amino acids, additional supplements, and you've already taken care of your caloric intake, you've taken care of meal timing, you've taken care of your recovery, you're taking care of all of those factors. Yeah, why not? Go ahead, drink some amino acids, especially if they're delicious.
And that's my next point. It honestly helps some people drink more water and maybe consume that larger jug during the actual gym routine, and it's not going to hurt. So if that's making you drink more water and it tastes good and you're getting a couple extra amino acids in there, we say it's a waste of money. Don't waste your money, but it really isn't that expensive. So if you're going to do it, it's not going to hurt. You just aren't really going to use extra protein that your body doesn't need, but that's pretty complex to determine the exact amount that your body uses and absorbs. So just topping off the stores and making sure that you have a little bit extra is probably beneficial.
We've been talking about amino acids for a while. Let's define some of those amino acids. So I just wanted to make sure I wasn't leaving any stone unturned. So just to break things down, you have your branched chain amino acids. It says here that these are essential amino acids with protein anabolic properties. So we're looking at valine, leucine, and isoleucine.
Those are 3.
Right? And then you have your essential amino acids, which these are essential because your body cannot produce these.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So there are 9 of them from what I'm seeing here. 9 essential amino acids: histidine, isoleucine, leucine, lysine, methionine. I can't pronounce that one.
Phenylalanine.
Thank you. Threonine, tryptophan, valine. And so those are the essentials. You have your branched chain amino acids, and it seems like all the other amino acids are amino acids that your body can get from other foods. I also read here that the essential amino acids, these 9 amino acids that I've just mentioned, those are very commonly found in forms of whey protein. I also noted that something such as like pea protein may have less leucine, which is essential for protein synthesis to take place.
Which is why many of the plant-based proteins that you see available for purchase now, at least, are combined sources. It's not just pea protein. It's not just rice protein. It's usually a combination of 3 different sources to at least get as close to possible as getting a complete amino acid profile.
So let's talk about those different types of proteins. So I have here some notes on soy protein. So apparently the stigma around soy protein is that too much soy protein may increase levels of estrogen, which is counterproductive for someone who wants higher levels of testosterone for increased strength or increased muscle size adaptation. There's an idea that higher levels of estrogen is produced because of soy protein, but soy is fine. You'd actually have to go through super high amounts of intake to have negative effects.
And what I've read is it can produce what's called estradiols, which your body can sometimes interpret as estrogen. It's to keep it as simple as possible. But like you said, you would have to have a super high amount for it to actually have negative effects. And usually the effects that you get on something like testosterone from natural means is really, really insignificant in the grand scheme of things. So people are even looking at certain foods that can raise testosterone. And for the most part, they really don't raise it enough or fluctuate it enough to have a significant effect. And these are people who are usually not doing all the other main things. So obviously your sleep, your hydration, your regular nutrition and recovery.
Okay. And then diving into casein. Casein is known for being slower digested.
I actually did a lab in college where we separated the casein
From the
and
whey?
whey protein from
Milk.
From milk.
Oh, interesting.
I
It's actually kinda cool.
immediately took a shot of it.
Did you?
Stimulate protein synthesis.
It's actually disgusting.
That's not true.
So to quote Barbell Medicine here, when speaking of casein, it does more slowly release amino acids into the bloodstream from the gut, but it's too slow to actually raise blood amino acid levels high enough to effectively drive muscle protein synthesis unless you dose it much higher than whey, which is the king of protein. So, and I'll get into whey protein a little bit, but to quote Barbell Medicine again, they believe that it just is too slow for it to be effective for protein synthesis.
I would say if we're looking at it from the perspective of you do your workout and then I want a form of protein to help spike my blood aminos in response to that stimulus to get adaptation from that workout, probably a little bit too slow because your protein synthesis is usually in that, it's usually 48 hours after. It could still be spiked 48 hours after. So
I was reading somewhere around 72 even.
So
But
it's
for a while.
different per the individual. Depends on the type of resistance training that you do. Depends on your adaptation levels and what's called your mTOR pathway. But what you see most people using casein for, if they are using that, is a lot of people will use it to prevent that catabolic effect. Maybe they'll have it before bed because, oh no, I'm going X amount of hours of sleep where I'm not taking in nutrients. During that time, maybe my aminos are dropping. Maybe other things are changing that I'm not getting this spike of aminos. Maybe I want to get this slower digesting protein in that helps maintain those levels and help eliminate that muscle waste type of thing.
And again, I think that's the whole intention behind that, is that you are trying to leave no stone unturned. If there is even the slightest indication that you might be entering muscle atrophy
Or sarcopenia in older adults.
or sarcopenia in older adults, why leave any stone unturned? You might as well just consume some before you go to sleep so that you can avoid that at all costs if it is actually possible. Pea protein. All right, pea protein. To be honest with you guys, I am not a fan of pea protein. My girlfriend takes pea protein because she is allergic to whey. It causes some irritation in her skin.
Is that it's called dairy issue?
Yeah, like a dairy issue.
Oh,
She
interesting.
just stays away from
Kinda just
dairy. Moving on to whey protein. So again, to quote Barbell Medicine, because I'm really a big fan of their work. When it comes to whey protein, Dr. Jordan Feigelbaum believes that whey protein is the king of all proteins. And I tend to agree with him, subjectively speaking, just because I haven't really reviewed any scholarly articles, but drives a good point that whey protein has about 3 grams of leucine per 20 grams serving, whereas brown rice protein has 3 grams of leucine per 40 grams serving. So that's almost twice the amount of volume consumed just to consume leucine, which is again necessary for protein synthesis to occur. So now let's talk about optimal protein intake. I think first and foremost, the optimal amount of protein intake depends. I know that's not the sexy answer that people are looking for, but the true answer is that it depends. It depends on age, lean body mass, dietary preferences.
I would also say
Insight.
goals and activity level too.
When you say age, do you mean biological age or are we talking training age?
No, we're talking about biological age because as you age, your body becomes less sensitive to amino acids. So it takes more amino acids to get the same effect.
I would also argue to say that training age would be an important thing as well because, somebody who biological age, you also do become less sensitive to protein synthesis as you become more resistant training.
I wonder if that's
Um,
the case.
Oh yeah, I was actually reading that in a research study by RMIT, the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, in their exercise physiology. Just what it was showing was that training response. So similar to how training adaptation, you require progressive overload because, you benching a bar can create stimulus to grow the chest. When you're 13, you've never trained before in your life, opposed to 10 years into your training career, a bar is going to feel like nothing. Sometimes you may even just feel like, hey, I need to warm up with more than just the bar to start. Similar to the protein synthesis of, all right, I need to have X amount of protein. But as I'm starting to become more trained, I become less sensitive towards that stimulus. Training age, I'd toss that in there as well.
I'd also like to note that there is a known refractory period to muscle protein synthesis, meaning that you should be consuming protein every 3 to 5 hours because you're going to reach your limit on how much protein or how much muscle protein synthesis can occur based off of the amount of protein available in your bloodstream, because that kind of recycles every 3 to 5 hours. Again, barbell medicine. There's a known refractory period to muscle protein synthesis, which we can think about on a gross level as muscle growth, recovery, building. Every time a large enough dose of protein is ingested, an example, one that provides enough leucine and essential amino acids to push the muscle protein synthesis reaction over the edge, there's about a 3 to 5 hour refractory period that must transpire before another dose of protein, either in a meal, a protein shake, etc., will yield another bout of muscle protein synthesis. So instead of trying to consume your prescribed 300 grams of protein in one meal, it's essentially useless because you're going to be peeing all that out, or peeing out what you don't use.
So what would you say is an optimal amount of protein, grams of protein, to consume at one sitting?
In one sitting, the most optimal amount that you should be consuming should be somewhere between 20 to 40 grams of protein, in my opinion. Of that, 3 to 5 grams consisting of leucine amino acids.
So if we're talking whey protein, if you have these 100% whey products, they seem to have about 10% leucine protein content. So what that would mean is about 20 to 25 grams in a scoop, which usually seems to be the average serving. So most of these ready to drink shakes that we have available, it's usually in the 20 to 24. Sometimes you'll see the like muscle builder ones that have 30 to 40.
Yeah.
We'll say, are those actually necessary? But in that 20 to 25 gram scoop, you're going to have between 2 to 2.5 grams of leucine. So you're saying around 3 grams.
Yeah, I want to shoot up a little higher just in case for some reason. Let's assume that when you're cooking the food, you're losing some of that nutrient value just because when you cook food, some of the nutritional value does diminish.
So because there really isn't a drawback to having extra protein, I mean, you're kind of just going to excrete what you don't use, but it's not like certain vitamins that may have a toxicity above a certain level. It is okay to overestimate a little bit to make sure you have those stores topped off and you're getting the amino acids that you want, essential to build muscle if that's your primary goal.
And you know what's interesting? Doesn't Precision Nutrition actually advise us to have about 2 palms of protein-based food items in every meal? And about a palm of proteins consists of about 4 ounces. So if we're assuming 4 ounces of chicken, just for simplicity, 2 palms of that would be 8 ounces. That's about, I would say, somewhere between 35 to 50 grams of protein, depending on whether you're being generous or a little stingy on the sizing.
So for those who don't have the visual, Precision Nutrition is Precision Nutrition is a company. Disclaimer, I'm certified through them, but I like their teaching method as far as nutrition because they, instead of weighing things out for every single person where maybe a physique competitor, bodybuilder might need to actually get a scale out, put their protein portion on a scale, put their carbs on a scale and get everything measured specifically, many individuals don't have that or aren't going to be able to stick to that. So they have a system where they break down food selection, your plate creation based on hand size. So a palm, your size palm is going to be a portion of protein. And that's also relative to your general needs because usually smaller people need maybe a little bit less protein intake based on lower body mass. They're usually going to have slightly smaller palms as well. But keep in mind, there are other protein sources in that plate. So we also have your veggie portion. That's going to be 1 fist size. You do get, based on the veggie, based on your carbs that you have there, you do get some proteins from those as well. So it's really just making sure you're getting whole lean sources of food, making sure you're getting those stores topped off. But yeah, that's going to put you around that threshold goal that we're looking for. So
let's talk about concrete numbers here because we've been giving a lot of general information, but just to spit out some facts here or some stats, the current recommended daily allowance provided by the National Academy of Medicine or of the national academies in the United States for dietary protein intake for adults is 0.8 to 1 gram per kilogram. Now, again, that's just for the general person who's moving. That's not for the trained athlete. For the trained athlete, I read somewhere, again, I like to quote Barbell Medicine, somewhere between 1.6 to 3.1 grams per kilogram. Dan, I think you found something differently than that.
Yeah, I think it was 0.7 to 2.3 kilograms from, again, the same MRIT. Institutes in Melbourne.
And then Scott, I think you found something somewhere within that ballpark.
I have they're all within the same ballpark. So I have a couple other things from Precision Nutrition. Their basic recommendations for basic protein synthesis are saying that you don't really need to consume more than 1.4 to 2 grams per kilogram, which would translate to 0.64 to 0.9 grams per pound of your body mass of protein per day. What they would say is if you're a 150-pound person, you should or could be taking in approximately 150 grams of protein. Now, another good source for looking at the research and in relation to dietary needs, supplements, is examine.com. So what they do is, in as unbiased a way as possible, they're not affiliated with any nutrition team or supplement companies. They basically take all the research that's available on a specific topic and sift that down into what's actually proven, what hasn't been proven, and they come up with these consensus statements. So if you go to examine.com, they are a website that basically sifts through the research, looks at every article that's available on a specific supplement or topic, and they say what this supplement or nutrient does, what it's been proven to do, what it hasn't been proven to do, and they kind of filter out all the tabloid information that doesn't really make sense and give you exactly the facts. So what their recommendations are for protein supplementation based on, and not just supplementation, protein intake in general, based on your goals are, and bear with me, this might be a little confusing, but if you are an athlete or highly active person and you are currently trying to lose body fat while preserving lean muscle mass, so you're highly active, but you're also trying to lose body fat and maintain your lean muscle mass, they recommend a daily intake of 1.5 to 2.2 grams per kilogram body weight, which translates to 0.68 to 1 gram per pound of body weight, which is, I believe, what Precision Nutrition was also recommending. Now, that's slightly different than if you are an athlete or highly active person and you're not trying to lose body weight, or you're just somebody who is just trying to lose body fat while preserving lean muscle mass. And that's going to be a slightly lower range at 1 to 1.5 grams per kilogram body weight, or 0.45 to 0.68 grams per pound. That would be a good target there. The third category they list is sedentary people not looking to change body composition just for general health reasons and preserving current muscle. A good daily target is much lower than those. That would be 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight or 0.36 grams per pound body weights. And they say upwards. So again, you can always overestimate that. You will generally just excrete extra protein that you take in, extra aminos. It's not really going to be detrimental.
Yeah, that's interesting. So just to summarize what you said, basically you're saying that
if you're sedentary, you're not doing much, your lowest end should probably be around 0.36 grams per pound body weight. On the upper end, if you're an athlete trying to lose weight, if you have a little more active lifestyle, you're trying to lose weight but still preserve that lean muscle mass, you're going to have upwards of 1 gram per pound. But I've also seen much higher in people like bodybuilders or highly anaerobic athletes. So that's deviating a little bit from what the research is saying, but I think this goes back to Jorge's mantra, leave no stone unturned. If you're doing everything else and you have high metabolic stress, you have that stimulus adaptation recovery curve, your stimulus is incredibly high, you might want to add in a little bit extra. It's not going to hurt you, but it's going to make sure that the amount that you actually absorb is still within that range.
All right. So gentlemen, this is all the science stuff. This is all the stuff that gives us credibility. You know, all the research that we've gone through ensures that we know what we're talking about. Now let's talk about the stuff that is a little bit more, how do I say, personable, such as challenges like, how do you consume so much protein? Let's say I'm coming at you as someone who's brand new to the fitness industry. I'm trying to focus on protein, and dang, it is so hard because I just realized I don't eat that much protein. I only eat protein like once a day. I eat a lot of fats. I love cheese. I love my French fries.
Some protein. Yeah.
So it has some protein, but now I'm struggling to have protein because that's what some of our clients do. I hear that so many times is, hey man, I'm struggling to eat protein. I didn't realize I struggled this hard.
And I think that's probably the important factor there, because we have a lot of our clients start with just a reality check of what you're currently doing. We'll have them use something like a MyFitnessPal and just track what you're actually doing, because you may think I'm having adequate protein, I'm having adequate calories, or maybe I'm not taking in as many calories that I want. But if you track for maybe 3 weeks exactly what you're eating on a given basis, it's going to highlight some of those areas and say, maybe I don't take in enough protein. Maybe I am only consuming protein once a day. And maybe that's why I'm the so-called hard gainer that seems like it's challenging to gain weight. So for those people, you could take certain strategies where maybe you first teach them what the protein portions are on their plates. You can show them that hand guide. The obvious thing is going to be your lean meats, but then introducing them to other foods that are included in there that also have protein to help boost that number up a little bit. Second, I would look at their lifestyle and say, why is it that they're only consuming this spike of protein one period of time? Maybe it's they're on the coaching floor, maybe they're a coach and they are really only having these quick snacks, like these carbohydrate, these quick bars, maybe some fruits and stuff like that they can get down while they're coaching nonstop. Maybe we look at a protein shake for somebody like that person. Granted, most of our food should be whole, minimally processed food sources, but if the alternative is I don't get as many nutrients as I want, then maybe getting the shake or ready to drink for that person, ready to drink protein, that's just the protein that's already mixed for you, not just the powder. Maybe getting that in their diet just to start the habit of having that could be beneficial for them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I had that experience with my girlfriend Matilda. She actually noticed that protein was really difficult, and she noticed that she would typically leave protein items like foods that are high in protein for last, just because they weren't the most delicious or flavorful.
What do proteins that are high in protein also do?
Proteins that are high in protein also do.
Not protein. Foods that are higher in protein also generally can make us feel full.
For longer periods of time.
For longer periods of time. So if you are somebody who's looking to lose weight, a lot of times simply just increasing your protein intake is going to help you with that, because you tend to feel a little more full. You tend to kind of stave off those cravings a little bit, and you have less appetite. So if she's saving them for last, she might not have an appetite for that. She might not be able to get through all those foods.
And so when she switched that, and when she started consuming protein first thing in the morning, making her a protein shake, made by yours truly, I make her protein shakes.
Oh, wow. That's so sweet.
She realizes that she's fuller for longer periods of time. She's more likely to hit her protein goal. So one piece of advice that I give to everybody that are struggling with protein intake is make sure that's the first thing you consume in the morning, because it's typically going to be the thing that you run out of in terms of prescribed amounts of protein as the day progresses, because you started off with 25 grams. You feel like you won. You have higher levels of self-efficacy, meaning you have higher levels of perceived achievement as it pertains to protein consumption. So start off with protein consumption early in the morning, drink a protein shake, maybe 2 scoops, start off with 50 grams. If you're a 200-pound male like me, then you're already a quarter of the way there. Then you fill in the rest with those whole foods, meats, carbohydrates, peas, any other food items that may include protein. But I think that you should always have that at the forefront of your mind, is protein first. Because as you mentioned, Scott, for the person that's trying to lose weight, for the person that's trying to get stronger, with the mentality of protein first, they're more likely to have higher levels of satiety. They're more likely to perform better in the gym, and they're more likely to have elevated levels of self-achievement, because they're able to hit their goals more easily.
Absolutely. And I think food choices can be a pretty important thing for that too. When we're talking about how to get more protein in somebody's diet, my biggest thing is I am always on the go, and I need these sources that, like, I can't always sit down and have a steak or sit down and have grilled chicken in the middle of my day. So sometimes you need something like a jerky, like one of those Chomps meat sticks that are actually minimally processed. So I actually have this Precision Nutrition also has a good infographic on the different macronutrients, carbs, fats, proteins. And instead of breaking it down into good foods and bad foods, they break it down into eat more of these foods, eat some of these foods, eat less of these foods. So we're all going to have, eventually we're going to go to McDonald's or have fast food once in our life, maybe eventually.
One day last night, actually.
Of course you did. So that would be from that eat less category, but it's not you didn't fall off the rails if you have that. But I'm just going to review some things from the eat more protein category. So in protein, we're going to have high protein sources that are minimally processed. You're going to have your eggs and egg whites, all your lean meats and your fishes. Generally, I would say the red meats shouldn't be every single day, but that's a topic for another day. But those also are very high in protein. Other things are yogurt. Greek yogurt, plain Greek yogurt is usually going to be the healthiest as far as minimally processed, less sugars, less additives, but also high protein content. Cottage cheese is actually pretty much predominantly casein protein, but it's more of a natural. And then tempeh. But then also important to note, lentils and beans are also pretty high in protein, and in certain cultures, insects, believe it or not.
Oh, yes. I love me a good cricket.
So in that some category, you also hear things like paleo diets or things that are just eating like bacon all the time. That I wouldn't put in that eat more category. So we have Canadian bacon, meat jerkies in your eat some category. Again, if my alternative is not having protein intake, then maybe I want some meat jerky, but I'm not going to have it every day. And then obviously the processed foods, the processed soy, high fat ground meats, high fat sausages, those are going to be in the eat less category.
Give me a ratio. I think a way to like standardize the good, so-so, no levels of foods.
So good is going to be minimally processed. You can hunt, kill, gather, fish it. The middle category is going to be a little bit more processed. Maybe it has some kind of label, maybe a little higher in fats. So the less good cuts that sometimes maybe taste a little bit better, but are higher in saturated fats. And then that no or less good, eat less of this category. Those are going to be the ones that generally have labels on them, are very processed, and also very high in those saturated fats or maybe trans fats or unhealthy fats there. So at this point, I think I just wanted to summarize a couple things. And this is also from examine.com, looking at a lot of different research studies. So when we're looking at protein, this is just we're going to speed through this and say what it does for this certain outcome. Does it affect it? Does it improve it? What it does. So for body fat, magnitude of effect, it has a minor decrease in body fat if you're taking in whey protein. And we talked about that before, where it might just help you enter into a hypocaloric diet. For insulin, slight increase. That isn't a negative thing. Believe it or not, we do need insulin for that pathway. Insulin does increase after resistance training, and that's also helping to stimulate this protein synthesis. Lean mass does have a slight minor increase in lean muscle mass. Now, that's not to be confused with muscle protein synthesis, which has a notable increase. So there's so many factors that go into this. It has to do with how you're training, how hard you're training, what type of resistance work you're doing, whether you are doing resistance work, maybe you're doing high intensity interval training work, maybe you are somebody who's just doing body weight or calisthenics. All these are going to affect the stimulus component of that stimulus adaptation response. What affects the magnitude of that response is what stimulus goes in, and then also how we are filling our body with these amino acids, getting our amino acids in our blood to increase. So we talked about a couple different ways. You want to keep that lean meats, you want to keep that minimally processed foods, and generally after workout, but it is important to note, we don't need to rush to get protein 15 minutes after your workout like many people used to think. And just to throw one more thing in there, some people used to think that super high protein diets were bad for your kidneys. There really isn't research that supports that. People with as high as 2 grams per kilogram did not show any negative effects with kidneys. Just eat what you need, and for the most part, you're going to excrete what you don't need.
So again, just to recap everything that we've discussed, key takeaways here: stimulus response adaptation. You're stimulating the muscle for whatever reason you need it. Either you need it to grow, you need it to be stronger, or you need it to be more explosive. Then you're adapting to that stimulus by managing your nutrition and managing your recovery, which is a much more broader term. The definition of muscle protein synthesis is the metabolic process that describes the incorporation of amino acids into bound skeletal muscle proteins. There are different types of proteins. There's a soy, casein, pea, but the king of them all is whey protein, just because of the essential amino acids and the branched-chain amino acids combination. The optimal protein intake, we agreed, was somewhere between 1.4 to 2.2 grams per kilogram.
Or on the low end, we'll say about 0.4 grams for super sedentary, up to 1 gram per pound plus.
Okay. And if you are struggling with your protein intake as prescribed by your fitness coach, the best way to ensure that you are hitting your target is by making sure that that is the first thing you consume in the morning, just for the sake of hitting the goal, not because it's healthier for you or it's shown to reduce fat, yada, yada, yada. None of those reasons. It's simply just for the sake of achieving the goal of hitting your protein intake for the day. All right, so that's all we had for today, folks. Next week, we are talking about, yeah, you're right, the F word, fiber.
The mental rep.